Debra Morrison, a 42-year financial expert. Welcome to the We Can Do It Women show, and I am your host, Debra Morrison, who is a 47-year financial planning expert, if you will. I am a wealth building expert, actually, and I've helped and championed extraordinary women just like you to build their wealth and their confidence around their future. And I am on a mission to ignite a revolution that at 50, 60, 70, and beyond, some of us might be a nickel slower, yet we're all just getting started. And our esteemed guest today comes to us from Queens, New York. Well, she was born in Queens. Now she's in the San Francisco Bay Area. Vicki Larson. Vicki, welcome to the show.
Oh, Deborah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to be able to talk to you and your audience today.
Well, I am pleased because you are an author and an award-winning journalist and so forth who writes extensively about modern relationships, right? Marriage and women's experience of aging. I mean, this is so up our alley. And so we're like on pins and needles. All right, ply us with all kinds of your wisdom. So the funny thing, well, not funny, but the interesting thing to me was you initially studied environmental science at the University of Vermont, and then you completed your BA in journalism and marketing at the University of Miami. So you're New York, University, Vermont, Miami, San Francisco Bay Area. You just like sampling the geography, yes?
Well, I was on the four-university 10-year plan. Yeah, I dropped out of college to follow a boyfriend out to Colorado, and then I married him for some reason a few months before my 21st birthday. So, yeah, when after working low-wage jobs for a long time, I said it is time to get that degree.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've worked for decades as a lifestyle editor, columnist, and feature writer for Bay Area newspapers, notably the Marin Independent Journal. And I've been to Marin and it is gorgeous. And so there's a high level of intelligence in Marin, and that tells me volumes that you've been there for 100 years. So you are good. And your work has also appeared in major outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, Newsweek, ARPS, the Ethel?
Ethel. Uh-huh.
Ethel, of course, Deborah, cheese and crackers. The Huffington Post, the Medium, and the Greater Good Science Center. Best known you are, Vicki, for your books on rethinking partnership and aging. And I want to just get it right into that first book that I know of, and that's Latitude, How You Can Make a Life Apart Together Relationship Work. Talk to
Yeah.
us about it.
Well, yeah, living apart together is not really new.
Yeah.
It's been around for a while. It's becoming more popular and more known,
Yes,
and
it
it's
is.
especially popular with women our age. Many who are divorced or widowed, who
Yes.
have been there, done that with male partners and need a room of their own. So the funny thing is, Deborah, is that my mom did that.
Wow.
Yes, when I was out in Colorado doing stupid things,
Go, Mom.
and not paying attention to what my parents were doing, really, my mom left our New York home and my father and went down to Florida where my older sister was living and bought herself a condo and got herself a job and made a life for herself. And my dad would come down once a month with Teddy, our Yorkie, for a long weekend. And they did that for about 10 years until he moved down to Florida to be with her. And I think that's how they lasted 61 years of marriage. And, when I got divorced the second time at midlife with kids, I had a big heart to heart talk with my mother. I suggest everybody do that with their parents. It's really important. And I asked her if she loved being a mom and a wife and what she would have done differently. And then I asked her, like, Mom, what the heck was that about? And she said, Well, I had enough. And now I wouldn't recommend people live apart together because you're at the end of your rope in your marriage or relationship.
Yeah.
However, during the pandemic, there was an article in the New York Times, and
Yes,
I think
there
it was
was.
called The Wife Left, but They're Still Married. And a lot of the women did do that
Yeah.
and they saw it as an investment in their marriage.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not for everybody,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying it's better than living with someone. It's just an option that really works for many people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you frame it, an option in a broader menu, right, of family and
Yes.
relationship forms. All of which the attempt here is to find what will support long-term love. Yes?
Absolutely. And if you get married and you get the marriage certificate, it doesn't tell you that you have to live together. It doesn't tell you have to be monogamous. It doesn't tell you anything. It's just like, oh, you got married here, you get all these wonderful perks and protections from the government.
Yeah.
But you get to shape the relationship that you want. And the thing is, most of us, and I too, had this vision of what it looks like. Well, you fall in love, you move in together, you put a ring on it, there's a house, there's kids, there's dogs, there's a minivan in my case for some reason. But, you don't have to follow that romantic script. And
Right.
especially women our age,
Yes.
you know, when you're not making families,
Yes.
not to say that everybody has children, but many of us do. You may already have children, you may already have grandchildren,
Yeah.
or you may be child free. And the thing is, you're not um, making that kind of life. So you get to make the life that you want.
Yes.
And, for some people, that's a little scary
Yes.
because, if you follow a script, well, you know what to expect. And when you're not following a script, it can be a little scary, but it also can be incredibly freeing. And so my goal in my writing is to let people know, not just women, but I mostly write for women, but I have male readers too, um, is to let them know that they can shape the life that they want,
Mm. Mm.
especially if, you've done all those years of caregiving. And maybe, some of us think like, well, it's me time,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
time for me now.
Right. Well, your writing gives a validity, Vicky, to that, rather than subjugating it to, well, that's kind of lesser, it's temporary, right? And so I think that is very, very needed, and I can imagine the relief that women, in particular, can feel as they read your work about this, and hear about your mom and everything else. So at this point, you're portraying. Living apart together to honor the connection and the independence. And you
Yeah.
recognize that partners really have different needs, and some of them quite strong for autonomy, right? And privacy and self-direction. And so
Yeah.
this gives that latitude for that to blossom. And it's kind of to me like the adage, less is more, right? And so rather than fall into this default kind of this is what you ought to be doing. I think that this invites and probably almost demands a close attention to communication
Oh
and
my
how
God.
close partners feel, right? That you write about that. You emphasize that emotional closeness depends more on how close partners feel than on sharing a roof, right? So talk to us.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And when you feel connected to your partner that way, it's more satisfying. And I mean, it's the cliche that absence makes the heart grow
Yes.
fonder.
Yeah.
And that actually is true because when you're not with your partner all the time,
Yeah.
you do think kindly of them. You think of all the things you love of them, about them. When you're under the same roof, you tend to think about all the negative things, like the toilet seat is up or the
Yes.
toothpaste cap isn't right on. And so you really do tend to miss them a
Yeah.
little bit more. And you have to get good at communicating, and you have to agree on, how are we going to communicate? How often are we going to communicate? How often we're going to see each other? And is it my place, your place? Do we meet in the middle somewhere? So it is a lot of communication. And, what I included in my book also is not the typical definition of live apart together where you have separate abodes. I wanted to also include like what is stupidly called a sleep divorce, but
Yeah.
what I call in the book, which a sleep expert called a sleep alliance,
Mm.
because um, people have different sleep needs,
Yes. Yes.
and um, and we are a very unslept
Yes, we are.
society, and
Yes, we are.
that not only cuts off years of our life, but it makes us cranky,
Yeah.
and it also leads to more hostility in relationships.
Yes.
So I wanted to include that too because we're seeing more and more people doing that,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I like that, and I like the aspect that you deal with the day-to-day logistics, right? You really get down to, okay, your how are you handling the finances? How are you navigating sex and intimacy when you have two different places? So, talk to us about, do you have like little conversation starters to help couples, converse in this regard? Because sometimes people, they have sex, but they don't talk much about it, right?
That is that is true. And sometimes they don't have sex and they talk a lot about the fact that they're not having sex. Um, yes, well, I do I do bring all these things up in my books
Right.
of these conversations to have. And actually talking about sex is a really important one because sex is a wonderful bonding experience for couples, not for everybody.
Yep.
No, there are many people who really are fine not being very sexual or being sexual at all. But when you are aligned in your expectations,
There you go.
you're happier.
Yeah.
So a lot of people make assumptions about things. We
Yeah.
assume that we're going to have kids, or we assume that we're going to have sex, or we assume X, Y, and Z. And, to have a more satisfying relationship, and this includes friendships too,
Yes,
even
indeed.
family relationships, and certainly work relationships,
Yeah.
is to, you know, well, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And what do we want from each other?
Yeah.
And are we good at monogamy, let's say,
Mhm.
not at work, but
Yeah.
with your romantic partner? And what about it do we, is important to us, and how are we defining what that is,
Mhm.
And so, just like realtors will say location, 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 therapists always say communication, 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 and we're just not so really good at that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
I think if you are not sharing the same space, you do have to be good at communication.
I think so. It,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. And you make the kind of the obvious argument that all couples start out living separately. And you can continue to stay that way, right?
Yes, because one of the biggest myths about live apart together relationships is that, well, only wealthy people can afford that. And it's like, but you weren't living with your romantic partner when you met them.
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing has to change.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Really. And also, what's really important is you don't want to, so a lot of people move in together because it's cheaper. It's true. Two people
Sure.
under one roof, it's one
Right.
rent or one mortgage, whatever. But you don't want to meld a romantic decision with a financial decision.
Oh, right
You
now.
know, there are many, many ways to be creative about how you afford your life. So I live alone in the house that I raise my children in. It seemed really small when there were four of us here, but now it's just me. So I Airbnb a room. And that's
Mm.
how I afford to live here. I could get a roommate, but I don't really want a 24/7 person in the house. So I Airbnb a room. And that is, you can get creative with how you choose to afford your life. And you do need to afford your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you need to pay attention to it before it sneaks up on you. And then you're dealing with a huge elephant rather than just saying, wait. This, okay, you'll have this streaming TV subscription and I'll have that.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you describe it as an ongoing gender revolution in later life, and I love that. Now, let's talk about your book, Not Too Old for That, How Women Are
Uh-huh.
Changing the Story of Aging.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will tell you that was not the book that I really wanted to write at first. I wanted to write a book about how to age alone even if you don't want to.
Okay.
Because let's face it, more and more people are living single.
Yes.
Women typically are widowed young. I think the average age of widowhood is 59.
56, I think.
Oh, okay. And so even if you're partnered now, the chances are you're going to be living alone at some
Absolutely.
point. And no one wanted to buy that book. But a publisher, I mean.
Yes.
When I was doing the research for that book, I was coming up on a lot of really ageist and sexist narratives about older women.
Of course. Yeah.
And it pissed me off, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And it really got me angry because at that point I was in my early 60s, and none of that was true for my girlfriends and me.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, where are all those narratives coming from?
Yeah.
Who's saying them? Why do we still believe this
Hmm.
when we're not living like that anymore? And then
Yeah.
truth, and so that became not too old for that, how women are changing the story of aging. And I look at, sex, finances. That one was a real interesting chapter for me to write because, like so many women, I left all the financial decisions to my then husband.
Yep. Yep.
And that was not a really good idea because I would have been on the trajectory, like happens to so many women, of
Yeah.
aging into poverty.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got savvy about financial stuff. I
Excellent.
taught myself, I read, I researched, I listened to people like you to avoid that,
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because we get paid less than men,
Oh,
and women move in and out of the workplace if they have children.
absolutely.
And I did. I mean, I always worked part-time, thankfully, because a husband is not a financial plan. And
Right.
I'm
Amen.
not saying that all of us are, heterosexual and married to men, but depending on a marriage or a romantic partner to be a financial plan is not going to work.
Not
Yeah.
at all. Not in the least. Too
Yeah.
much too much weight on that, and then it doesn't bear truthfully in society.
Right.
I know that on my pulses.
Yeah.
And then you co-authored The New I Do,
Yeah.
Reshaping Marriage for Skeptics, Realists, and Rebels.
Yes. So that was my writing partner, Susan Pease-Gadwa, is a therapist, and we started writing for the Huffington Post divorce section, which is so interesting because she hadn't been divorced, but she got married later in life, I think when she was 41, and
Okay.
people said to her, "Well, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married?" And I'd been married and divorced twice, and people were like, "What's wrong with you? Can't you keep a man?" And we both felt, and she works with divorcing women,
Yes,
and
of course.
um, there was just this sense of shame
Yeah.
that your marriage was a failure because you didn't last until death, which basically means in order to have a successful marriage, one of you has to die because then
Yeah.
you've made it until death.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, but why? Why is longevity the way that you decide that marriage is a success? Especially if it's a long marriage, but it was full of anger and contempt, maybe, and it was sexless and loveless. Why is that a success? So we looked to see how people are shaping their marriage, because this is a book on marriage, how
Right.
they are shaping their marriages. And we realized that people were doing different creative things, and that
Wow.
includes live apart together. So
Wow.
there was a chapter in that. So and that was a fun book to write. And also what was so fantastic is that so many people wrote to us and said, "I really feel seen."
That was
Because
me, right? That was me.
yeah, because they realized that they weren't crazy because they were doing something different and that they weren't alone in doing it, that there are people who are managing their romantic relationships to work for them. Again, shaping the relationship for them. It doesn't just look one way. And
Yeah.
so it is a book for people who are considering getting married because we do ask, like, well, why do you want to get married?
Yes.
What do you hope to have from that? And what from being single would you want to include in that? And what would you not want to get rid of? And but the book is also for couples who maybe have been in a long time marriage and perhaps facing a divorce. And like, well, would you try one of these models instead of divorcing? Like, would
Right.
you be creative? Would you recreate your marriage into something else?
Yes.
And that could be, living apart together, or if you're in a sexless marriage, maybe having an open
An open
marriage,
relation. Yeah.
which again, not going to be for everybody, but
Mhm.
it works for some people. So we just want people to, like, the Gwyneth Paltrow made conscious uncoupling popular, even though she didn't come up with that term. We were doing conscious coupling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, and I think you were doing, you two were the permission partners, right?
Yeah.
We give you, she was the shrink, you were a writer. We give you permission
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
imagine and to converse and to form something that really works for the two of you or the three of you. I mean, who knows?
Yes. Or
So,
more.
well, Vicki, this has been rich. We could talk for a long time, and maybe we'll have you back. So to do just that. But in the meantime, tell our viewing audience how they can best reach you, please.
Oh, great. Well, I do have a website with my name, Vicki Larson. I'm on, oh my God, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Blue Sky and Threads and Facebook and all of the social media, which is kind of a little sad, but hey, you have to do that. And yes, I hope that people, if they're curious, I have email and ways to reach me or reach me through social media or yeah, and I write on Medium weekly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, this has been rich beyond words, and I'm really thinking that a lot of our peeps will be reaching out and grabbing a book or two of yours and perhaps connecting with you on social as well. We'll have all those in the show notes, so you don't have to take that down now if you're looking at us and needing a pen and pad. No, you don't. We'll give you that under the recording. And so, thank you so much, Vicki. It's been a joy. And thank you, our viewing audience, for joining us on the We Can Do It Women show. And
Thank you,
remember,
Deborah.
I
Thank
see you, I value you, and your greatest chapter is just beginning. If today's episode sparked something in you in terms of, maybe I should be more attentive to my own finances in the event that that is helpful. And more marriages are not subdivided in terms of gender roles and income expectations. And so I invite you to be in charge of your own money. I cannot be a bigger champion of that. And I invite you to check out and join our Women's Rising Wealth Club. Yes, I just started it in October last year. $47 a month. And once a month, we're going to be live. Our January session is tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Eastern, in order to come together as like-minded women. And I will use and leverage my 47 years of financial experience, 47 years of experience, $47 a month. You get it. So you will get, I believe, a completely aggressive return on your investment if you show up and you participate. And I wouldn't be happy if you did anything less than that. So I'm looking to have you be up leveling your confidence around money and to be increasing your financial net worth as well as the other facets of wealth: physical, mental, relational, spiritual, and then, of course, financial. So until next time, I'm Debra Morrison, reminding you that it's never too late to shine and pay attention to your money, and it will surely pay you back. Thank you so much.